Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bitch Up. How are we doing on this fine day slash evening slash
Week.
all the above?
We're alive, baby. We're alive.
Yes,
We're pissed at the World Cup. It's hot. It's really hot.
it is really hot. Yes. I was going to say, by the time this episode goes up, the World Cup is going to be over and we will have our World Cup champions. So thank God. Just kidding.
Thank God.
Thank goodness.
I'm over it. Like, honestly, the World Cup ended for me like 2 weeks ago. No kidding.
Ditto.
But yeah, I haven't been keeping up as much just because like I'm not that enthused by the finalists. So, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I watched,
We'll see.
some of the qualifying games for the finals, so it was interesting to see because I hadn't seen those teams play, to be quite honest. I hadn't really kept up with them, aside from England, obviously, because I watched the Mexico game, but all these other teams, I
Yeah.
had no idea how they were doing or playing. So it was
Yeah.
cool at least to see their play style,
Mhm.
and then I finally saw some of the shit that people were talking about when it came to, like, Argentina and, like, their aggressive ways, so I was like, "Oh."
Their controversies, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, "Okay, well" but yeah, congratulations to the winner, I guess.
Yeah, we'll
And
see.
aside from that, do you have a bitch up moment or recommendation this week?
Um, yeah, I have a recommendation. I have recently started watching Welcome to Dairy,
Mm,
and I'm really into it. I binge watch a couple episodes the first night, and ever since then, I've been pacing myself just because it's like it is a lot. And I will say it is scary. It is giving the EBGBs, and I can imagine being a kid and being so scared.
yeah.
Honestly, there was times that I'd had to be like, ah, like while I was watching it, just because like I was like, I don't need those visuals later tonight, especially because usually I was watching it during the nighttime.
Yeah.
Happy to report, haven't had any crazy nightmares or any crazy dreams because of what I've seen there. So I was like, "Cool, I'm glad that we're keeping that separate and divided." But other than that, I've enjoyed watching it. So,
Yeah, I've heard it's good, and that's honestly the only reason I haven't watched it myself because 'cause I'm like, I don't wanna be scared. I think I learned my
yeah.
lesson with the, oh my god, Bates Motel, and I would say that wasn't as scary, but it was still like
Yeah,
a
I was about
very,
to say, I was like, I don't think that was as
like,
scary, but very
yeah, so
eerie and dark.
yeah, and thrilling. So I imagine it because I remember when I watched it as a kid, the original, I was so scared of it. And then I
Yeah.
rewatched it again as like a teen and I was like, "Oh, it's kind of funny but still scary." And so now I'm like, "Ah." But I'm tempted now to watch it too just to see
To see
what
what
it's
it
all
was.
about. Did
Yeah.
you see that they're coming out with a Crystal Lake series in October?
No,
Friday the
I hadn't
13th?
actually, no, but I mean,
Yeah,
that sounds like fun. I would
that sounds
welcome
so
it.
fun. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, cool." I love that instead of, like, remaking the films, they're going with the series because 'cause I'm like, there's so much that you can add and
Do.
include. Yeah, and
Yeah.
do. So it'll be interesting to see how they, do Friday the 13th with the series. It seems it's going to be based on the original,
Nice.
um, and
Same
how they
time?
got there. How we got to the original, basically. Very similar
That's
to
cool.
Bates Motel, I think, like
I
the
was
the
gonna say
prequel of
that.
her yeah, like a prequel to all of that.
I like that because to your like, as you said, when we have, series, people have a lot of more creative liberty, and you get to do so much more for, like, character development and plot development
Mhm.
and such. So I think it's fun, and then also, I think it also gives you the opportunity to, again, get creative and not get so, wrapped up on, like, the original script and having to, like, do
Mhm.
bar for bar. No, I'm kidding, but, sometimes when people do remakes and stuff, people get very, judgmental about how they do the remake, but I feel like when
Yeah.
it's a series, you do kinda have more liberty there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's exciting. I actually hadn't heard of it. But yeah, that's my recommendation to watch it if you haven't, or pick it up sometime before the end of the year, or maybe wait until October if you want to, or
Yeah.
once we get into fall time. I just randomly stumbled upon it and I was like, oh, let me just take a peek at it. And then I got into it. So now I'm
Yeah.
here. And what's funny right now that you were mentioning like watching the original It and being like so scared. So it's funny because when I was first introduced with it, it was in Spanish, and also it was all the spoofs and, like, all like, the spoof videos from YouTube from back in the day, like, that was my
Mhm.
introduction to it. So then when I finally watched the movie, I think it was not as scary as it would have been if I didn't have that kind of introduction to it. And then obviously I, like,
'Cause your mind
had
can
read
go
some of the
over to the
books too.
spoofs and you're like, "Oh, this is where it came from."
Yeah, yeah, and then I remember I had started reading it at one of my homeroom classes. One of my teachers, he used to have his library, and it was all, like, Stephen King books and stuff. So
Mhm.
I remember I picked it up once. I never finished it when I was in high school, so it was, like, cool to watch it in, in the movie form. And then when the actual movies premiered, I remember watching in theaters and going to the IT experience that they did out
Hmm.
in LA too, and that was so
Oh,
much
the
fun.
newer films? Like the
Yeah.
new okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
like,
the
"Wait,
newer
you
one.
saw the original in theaters?" I was like, "What?"
No. No, but when they did the remakes,
Yeah.
when that hit theaters and they did, like, this, like, whole IT
Yeah, I
experience
remember
downtown.
watching it in theaters, and my friends and I went with my friend and his brother and I think a cousin of his,
Mhm.
and we took gummies and we were watching, and I was
How
like
was that? Were
it
you
was
tripping
cool.
out? Oh,
Yeah, I was
okay.
tripping, especially when he does the little dance, like, once he's the chase scene and through the houses, that's when it hit peak, and I was just like, "This is so freaking creepy."
You're like, "I am floating."
Yeah, I'm like, "We all float down here."
Yeah. That's funny.
No, but that's cool. I also have a recommendation. It's on the lighter side. I recently watched Voicemails to Isabel on Netflix, and
Okay.
it's like a little rom-com in a way, and I thought it was really cute. I felt something,
Mhm.
and it was corny
The
in
right
all the
ways.
ways, yeah. So I know some people are like, "Oh, these movies nowadays are, like, so corny and, like, whatever." I thought that they had a good amount of corniness. That just sounds wrong. They had a good amount of corniness, and yeah, I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. So if you guys are wanting to feel something and want to watch, like, a cute little rom-com, I suggest that you watch Voicemails to Isabel on Netflix.
Interesting. I don't think I've seen what is it called? The preview for that or, like, the trailer or anything like that on that.
Yeah, I just came upon it because I also wanted to recommend 4 Seasons. It's on
Oh, that's
season
right.
2, and I didn't realize they had already dropped the 2nd season, so I binged that, and then I still wanted to feel something because 4 Seasons, it's really good. It's very much more so, like, based on elderly adults, like, in their, 50s and
I'd
up,
say, like, middle-aged
yeah,
adults.
middle-aged, but
Mhm.
it's nice to see, and it's I liked it. Cole Domingo's in it, Tina Fey, a lot of really good actors, like, all their names are literally, I can't think of them 'cause I got nervous. But yeah, recommend 4 Seasons.
You're like, I put that's so funny because it's like you put yourself on the spot.
Yeah.
You made yourself nervous.
Yeah, so if you guys wanna have, like, a fun little dramatic watch, 4 Seasons is also good to watch. So for today's episode, this episode's a little weird because we're kind of touching on a very we kinda have to talk about club culture in order to kinda get into the specifics of what we wanna talk about, right? And one of the things we wanted to talk about, I guess it's like one of the newer things that we've been seeing on social media is the men epidemic as far as like club culture and them dancing on tables and it kind of goes into play of like why club culture is dying. I feel like that's another topic that we've been seeing going around on social media. So, yeah, that's what we'll be talking about today. So I think one of the bigger things that we'll probably have to discuss when it comes to like club culture is really, I guess, the history of club culture and as far as like what we've known of it when we were growing up and the things that we saw right when it came to club culture and growing up. I think like one of the things that I think of a lot as far as like club culture, obviously you think of like the dance movies, like
Yeah.
Step Up to
Save the
Save the
last
Last
Save the
Dance,
last
right?
chance, yeah.
Stuff like that where
Even
club
the hot
culture
chick, remember? We're
or,
going.
yeah, the hot chick or, oh my god, what's that bar?
Oh, Coyote Ugly?
Coyote Ugly, yeah,
Yeah.
like, that culture also, and obviously club culture is very present in those films and a lot of the films that we saw growing up and what
Mhm.
we imagine club culture would be, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
dancing, everybody's having a good time, everybody's, like, dance battling each other, and
Yeah.
then, obviously, we grew up or I think we started partying around, what, 2016 and up, I think, because we turned 21 around 2016, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to decide. I was just like, "Well, we started partying way earlier than that," but that we
Yeah,
were in the
the
club
club culture.
scene
Yeah, the club
Yeah, I think that
yeah.
that makes sense. That's pretty accurate, I'd say.
Yeah, and obviously, I think music has a lot to do when it comes to how club culture is influenced. And then also you would have to think about what club culture is catering to during each era, right? I think one of the reasons or as far as again, when we were growing up, we saw a lot of clubbing having to be catered to men, I would say, right? It was catering very much to, like, the male gaze, where women were more so, like, the attraction, I guess you can say, right?
They
Because
were
you
the
could say
prize. Women were the
yeah,
prize. And men's proximity to women gave them, like, value or status and in the club, I would say. And like you said, because we were kind of leaning into the whole male gaze of it all. So the way
mhm,
women dressed, you have, like, the clubbing ratio like, the ratios, like, do you remember, like,
yes.
ratios? Like, to get a table, you had to have certain women like, you couldn't find
I
any
forgot about
men
that. Yeah.
yeah, you couldn't find any men just owning a table by themselves. Like, you do you remember when we were in Vegas and, like, people would approach us to be like, "Hey, do you guys wanna be part of our table? We
Yeah.
need, like, this many girls." We're like, "We already have our table, we're waiting for our people." But, yeah, like, that was, like, a whole thing, like, you unless you had, like I think you had to have dropped, like, serious amounts of money and actually be somebody to have a table to yourself and just it be just men, you know?
Mhm.
But even then, that would attract the girlies, and
Yeah, and then even just talking about how women will get up and be in the DJ booth or being on top of tables and dancing or just being in
yeah.
the VIP tables themselves and dancing.
Mhm.
Again, it was very much designed for the male gaze, where again, men were the audience and women were the spectacle, right? And like you mentioned, this is why women had the privilege of, getting in free until a certain time, getting free drinks till a certain time,
Yeah.
and men were strictly consumers, right? And they were spectators and they had to pay the entry
Yeah.
fees to even get into the same clubs as the women.
Even
And
club
if
promoters, that's all they sought, they
yeah,
sought girls throughout the day to get them to sign up for their free table, but really it was just a scheme to get girls to come to the club so that, like, men would wanna get there into
yeah.
yeah.
Which is so interesting, right? Because you would think that just having women alone would be enough to be in the club, but then it's like, who's dropping the money when it comes to buying these tables, right? It's the men.
Right.
So there is, I don't know if it's like a symbiotico, like an unwanted symbiotico relationship there, where clubs were existing because you had men that were going to be paying and dropping money to be in these clubs and be in these tables, and then you had women who and also buying drinks for women, right? Like
Well, some would say that, like, the club culture was very reflective of men and women's relationship dynamics of the time, right?
yeah.
And speaking generally, right? Because we've had women be breadwinners or, like, the power dynamics be different, but in, like, early 2000s stuff, you definitely saw this part where men were sort of providers or men were sort of paying for stuff or, like, the allure of being with a man that was,
Mhm.
like, um, I don't wanna say necessarily well off, but that had his own money and could hold
Mhm.
his own. He's paying for our drinks, he's paying for our table, and I'm here to be arm candy and just have a ball, you know?
Yeah.
And again, not to say that that's how it was directly reflective of the times, but I think it did reflect in part what the relationship dynamics were and
Mhm.
how, like, women were seeking these type of ballers, shot callers, if you will, to make to to kind of, like, have that kind of, like, "Yeah, like, you're paying for my stuff, and I'm here to be your arm candy and
Yeah.
having a ball while I'm here," right? Or at least that's what you saw a lot on music videos too, right? Like, that's what the
Mhm.
music was putting forth, especially the the music that was very popular in the club scene, right? Like, you have,
Yeah,
like, hip hop and everything. You saw, like, Nelly, you saw P. Diddy, like, everybody, like,
he
just,
did
like,
it. Mhm.
exuding this excess of, like, wealth and money, and all these women that were around him and that obviously they were paying for
Yeah.
some reason or
And that's
another.
a great point, and I'll probably touch on that a little bit later. So then
Mhm,
the question now comes, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where now people are saying the clubs aren't the same, club culture is not the same, right?
mhm.
And I literally spent the whole week just listening to like current music and then music when I was out in the club, in the streets,
Yeah.
and just trying to remember at least the times that you and I have been out, like what was happening around us. And I
Mhm.
will say, even just now, like I again, maybe this is just because we're older. I guess in general, like the younger generation aren't drinking as much as we were, or as much as like the previous generation was. I would say they have like a somewhat sober lifestyle just because there is such an emphasis on being healthy and, like,
Okay.
self-care, right?
Mhm.
And, obviously, traditional clubs heavily relied on liquor sales to pay, right? Especially now in this economy, you have increasing rents, right? And so when you used to be able to pay rent just based off of, like, your liquor sales, you had no problem, right? But now because not a lot of people are drinking or not drinking as heavily as they used to, I could see how some of that has caused clubs in major cities to shut down, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think another thing that I saw when it came to people talking about why they don't like going to the club or why they feel a little self-conscious is a lot of the about being recorded.
Yeah.
Um, they mentioned that they hate dancing because they don't wanna see themselves on social media being judged or people,
Interesting, yeah.
yeah, so which I thought was interesting because 'cause I'm like, I know when obviously we grew up in a time where social media was, like, manic, right? We had Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and now we have
Shout out
TikTok,
to MySpace.
MySpace, yeah. But when we were partying, we had Snapchat, and I'm like, I do remember recording a lot when I was out with my friends around that time. However, I don't ever recall recording other people. It was mostly, like, our friend group, right? But then
And
it
whoever
also
was in the background.
yeah, but it wasn't focused on them. I think when
I
I
think the
hear
only time it would get focused was if, like, you were in a crowd and, like, someone was in the middle and they were doing stuff and you were
and you were
recording the people.
vibing. Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
you were
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
recording the
yeah.
vibe, yeah.
Yeah, so I can see now, like, maybe people are so anxious now that just seeing a camera out, they just assume that they're being recorded, you know what I mean? Like, they're
We're
just, like,
being
so
surveilled. This hyper
yeah,
awareness of being surveilled. Yeah.
mhm, and then I think the only other thing that I can think of as far as, like, why club culture is dying is also the dating environment or
Dating scene, dating
the dating
culture.
scene, yes, thank you. I was like, "What is that?" Yeah, the dating scene. I think especially now with online apps, a lot of people are relying more so on online dating apps than, like, before people would go to the club. Again, Save the Last Dance, Step Up, like, people would go to the
That's where
club
you go to meet
to go
people.
meet potential romantic partners, right?
I think that clubs went from being third spaces to being like, what are we gonna say? Capitalism ruined it for it to
Yeah,
be more of business
mhm.
dealings, if you will,
They
right?
got
Because
commercialized, yeah.
it got commercialized, yeah, like, your whole experience got commercialized. To have, like, a decent experience at the club, you wanna have a table because you need
Mhm,
a place to sit if you get tired, especially at our big age. You like the division between the rest of the crowd and here. Sometimes it's like a safety thing or you're just, like, more comfortable, and they started
mhm,
selling, like, VIP experiences, right? Before, it was a little bit more egalitarian, and yeah, you did have, like, the VIP section and, like, the tables and the bottle service, but I feel
mhm,
like they really started trying to capitalize on that where people are spending a bunch of money to
mhm,
have that, and sometimes the experience is not even it. Because what are you doing? You're just sitting down, you're not actually enjoying the music. You're more
mhm.
concerned with people looking at you and like, "Oh, look at me with my bottle, look at me with, like, my sign and my little" what is it? The little firecracker thing? And people are just, like, recording it, right? That's all it is. You're not actually enjoying the fun. I do think there is an element of the whole it's funny because 'cause I've talked about this with my boyfriend before where we were just talking about how, wow, what a time to be alive when the club scene was what it was in the '90s and the 2000s, and, like, phones weren't a thing. You were just there for the vibes. Again, it was a third space where people enjoyed to be in community. You go with your people, you go with your girls, or you go to meet new people, right? Especially when you talk about like the dancing scene and like the battles and stuff, you would go find a guy that dance good and you would just have like a ball with them. And yeah, if things work out romantically afterwards, cool. But if not, you at least got a fun dance and this guy knew how to dance. Nowadays, we were just trying to feel up on you. It's not even about the dancing anymore. So
Yeah.
annoying. Yeah, it's just like I do think that the recording is an element of it where people are just too self-conscious and too in their heads of how they're going to be perceived. And
Mhm.
even like the people that are holding the phone, right? Like whether you're recording for content for like your social media, whatever it is, like you're in this mindset of how I want people to perceive me or what I want to show from this night and things like that. So I think it does change the experience, like on a mental perspective, and just like the way people conduct themselves. And even people that are, like you said, there's some folks that are also a little self conscious of seeing people recording there. Like maybe they don't want to be recorded. I don't
Mhm.
think I've ever felt that way because I mean, we've been out and about and like we've seen people record. We will be recording stuff. We will be recording content for our social media sometimes, and I've never felt like I don't wanna be
Mhm.
recorded, but I can
Yeah,
see
but I
that
do think
being
it
a
has
thing
a
for
lot to do with
younger.
age too, because 'cause we're
Yeah,
also
that's
not in the
why.
club, we're at bars, depending on what bar you're going to, but I do agree that the nightlife in general has been commercialized. I think a lot about the Resort World Hotel, that club that we went to. I forgot what the club name
Zouk?
is.
Club
Zouk?
Zouk?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Club Zouk. I hate that club because of the
It's so
format of it.
it the space is so crowded, like, it's so
There's no
annoying. Their
dance floor
layout
and
their
there's more
layout is
VI there's
stupid.
a lot more tables, and I think when it comes to commercialization that a lot of clubs are going down that path of, like, just tables and very
Ugh,
limited dance
dancing
floor,
space,
and
yeah,
so I
because 'Cause they're
remember I'm like, we
forcing
were
people to
always
buy.
so packed in there, and it's like,
That's
the
why it's
only
like
way
yeah, go ahead. Finish your
the
thought.
only
I
way
think you're
that you
getting
could really enjoy yourself there is if you had a table because now you have space, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think
So
now
it's intentional that they're setting them up like this.
yeah, and I do agree. Obviously, going from like the 90s and the 2000s to like to 2010s now to the 2020s, I think that there has been an evolution as far as the club scene goes, and then men have also evolved.
Yeah.
I think it's
And
been
women
interesting.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
women too, but I obviously now the when you were talking about, when buying a table and a bottle in the 2000s, it's like, yeah, sure, like, there was very limited tables, and if you had a table, it did give some form of prestige, but then
Yeah.
it got to a point where because now all the clubs have all these tables, right? Where if you had a table and you had a bottle, it signaled financial power. Now that it's become a more common thing or a more normal thing, it ceased to have whatever status it used to have
A
as far.
status symbol. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you have to consider, like, how are people going to differentiate themselves
What's the new status
yeah,
symbol
like, what is
to
the news thing? And that's how we get to men dancing on tables or, like, being higher up than the rest of the people there because now when we talked about, space,
or
right, because of the different
yeah.
formatting of the clubs, and how do you stand out when it's super dark and no one can see that you bought a bottle? Like, people are like, "Oh, yeah, they bought a bottle." They have the signs, they have sparklers, but then at the end of the day, they're like, nobody really cares. But it's
Yeah,
like,
it's
how
like
can
a
I be
been there,
seen
done that.
now? You
Yeah.
stand up, stand on the sofa, stand on the furniture, and you're like, "I'm here, bitch."
They literally are physically looking to elevate themselves to assert some sort of dominance in the physical
Yeah. They're
space.
shifting the gaze, right? Because we talked
Yeah.
about how previously club culture was more so fixated on male gaze, and now it's kinda shifted where it's still, I guess, male gaze, but, I think it went more so from
But the
being
attention went from
something.
the attention went from, the male gaze fixated on women to the male gaze fixated on men, and what are the other
Yes.
men doing there, and
Or,
comparing
like, from
it.
sexual to, like, socioeconomic, right? When we were
Yeah.
talking about, like, financial power. So now men are buying these VIP tables to please males in some way, but it's not necessarily to be entertaining, right? Again, they're broadcasting their physical dominance, like you mentioned, and
Mhm.
whatever financial status they have, not only to, potential romantic partners, but also, like you mentioned, to the men. So
Yeah.
there and even us as club attendees, well, I wouldn't include us because we don't go anymore, but like club attendees
Yeah.
also kinda keep an eye out for people like that because like you said, it's like, "Oh, I want a place to sit down or, like, have more space, so I'm going to try to get someone who has a
Seek
table's
that.
attention
Yeah.
so I can get in with the people."
Yeah, it's like, you I need to make eye contact with one of
Yeah.
yous and be like,
Mhm. "Can we have your table?"
yeah. "Can we have your Totino's pizza roll?"
If you know, you
And
know.
your
Just
left
kidding.
yeah, if you know, you know. And you and your leftover Dom Pellegrino.
That is
I'm
so
just kidding.
funny.
Yeah.
It was their past lives.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking when it comes to, like, men, because I was like, do I think I was asking myself, "Do I really care if men are dancing on tables?" And I'm like, "No, not really." I think the only issue is that they're just on tables and not doing anything. Like, if they were dancing, breaking it down, like, I think I'm like, "Oh, that's so fun," like,
Yeah,
good
because then
for
it's
them.
giving Magic Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Take off your shirt while you're at it. No,
Yeah,
kidding.
have a great time. Because 'Cause I'm like, I also think, like, sometimes I can see how people are like, "Oh, that's so obnoxious," but I'm like, I think the same thing with some girls that are on tables. I'm like, You're just as obnoxious because sometimes they'll be, like, bumping into you while they're dancing on tables," and I'm like, "Can you, like, control a little
I'll be
bit of
like,
your body?"
can you just get your own table to dance on top of? If you wanna dance on a table, go for it. Just dance on your own table, not on mine. Get out of my space. Thank you.
Oh, it's not even like because sometimes they have, like, platforms in some places where it's a general space, but people can get up on the platforms, and it's not
Oh, yes.
necessarily a table, but they'll still be,
Oh,
like,
okay.
bumping, and I'm like, "You should still be physically aware of, like, your surroundings," and that's where I'm like, "It's a little obnoxious." So, I don't really care
Mhm.
for people standing on top of places, like, I never understood it because 'cause I'm like but I'm also very self-conscious where I'm like, "I don't need that
Yeah,
kind of attention. I'd rather
right.
just blend into the dance floor than stand out on top of platforms," which is interesting because I could see how some people, when it comes to, like, buying tables, see it more as a safety net for them than, like,
Look at
aside from it
me.
being, "Look at me," yeah, because it's like when
Yeah,
you're on the dance floor, you're expected to dance, like, it's gonna be a little weird if you're on the dance floor just standing around looking around,
yeah.
right? Like, that's
You're gonna look
creepy.
like
We've
a creep.
seen people doing that, yeah.
Yeah,
So, like, when you have your own table, it's like you are exempted from being
the
sociable in that way,
expectations.
yeah,
Yeah,
and you don't need to rely on, like, your personality or any rhythm to be noticed, right? And
yeah,
yeah, so I was like,
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I've certainly treated bottle service and tables in that way, that it's just like it creates your own space and you have your own sort of buffer between yourself and the rest of the crowd, and
Mhm.
it's nice sometimes because you don't have to deal with certain people that are either overtly drunk or, like, obnoxious to your point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I was thinking, because 'cause I'm, like, trying to think back. I'm like, when I see men have, like, their own table, right, it's just men lurking, looking around, like, trying to make eye contact with people. To me, I always especially now in the way that people describe, like, what it's like to be in a club right now and
Mhm,
nobody's dancing, everybody's just kinda looking around.
okay.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of strip club culture,
Mhm,
as far as how men act, because when y I've never been to a strip club, but I have seen it portrayed several times in wait, have I been to one? No. I'm, like, trying to make sure I'm like, "Today?" No,
I was
I
like,
haven't.
No, you guys always turn me down when I would suggest it in Vegas."
But obviously, strip club culture,
And
you
we tried
have,
to go
like
in Cancun once, remember? But then it was giving a
oh,
little sketch,
yeah.
so we're like, "Let's just leave."
Yeah. But what was I gonna say? I
Strip
know with strip
culture.
club culture, usually men have, like, their VIP sections, they can buy their bottles, and they're, like, throwing out money, and,
Mhm.
like, obviously, their control of money influences the vibes of the environment, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that strip club behavior has kind of made its way into club culture, if that makes
Okay.
sense, where you have these men sitting around in VIP, also like flexing their cash, right? Like when you're recording, they're like, oh, we got money.
That's
And I think the
interesting.
music has a lot of influence. And I'm glad you brought it up because I do think that music has kind of pushed this strip club mentality into club culture. I think initially we saw it a lot with like EDM because I remember when we were at the Resorts World, many m m a majority of the time that we went to that club, it was because there was a DJ event.
We
There was
wanted
some
to
kind of
see.
sponsored event that was happening there, and that's why everybody's was, like, so packed and you had the tables around, right? So I think when you have also that commercialization of club culture where it's just, "Oh, so and so is gonna be here, you wanna be here in the
Yeah,
club
or
culture."
DJs.
Remember
Yeah.
when we went to Dre's and allegedly,
Migos.
Migos was gonna be there and everybody was just standing around while the
That
music
was
was
so
playing?
fucking annoying,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was so
And they turned up
exactly.
at, like, 3 a.m. We were there since, like, literally before midnight,
Yeah, yeah, and
and I
that reminded
famously
me
had
of that, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, yeah," like, events like that, people are just waiting around when you could be having fun while you're waiting around. So,
Yeah, exactly, like, I thought that's what was gonna happen because that was what we experienced when we went to Dre's to see,
Pauly D.
Pauly DJ
Mhm.
and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it was, like, Halloween or whatever, and yeah, like,
Mhm.
we danced, the music was great, and then he came out, yeah, like, at fucking 3 plus AM también, but it's
Mhm.
fine, it was a vibe, we had fun the entire night, so it was
Mhm.
such a contrast to when, we pulled up for Migos because the vibes were dead,
Yeah, like,
and
no
we
one
were
was
just like,
moving, everybody was so packed, and if you wanted to
"Okay."
dance, you couldn't even, like, move, and we're like, "We're trying to have a good time." I'm like, "My feet are hurting because 'cause I'm not moving." I'm like, "We
Exactly.
need to move around."
And it also
But
sucked because of the way those spaces are, we're talking about the layout and the way they create these
mhm,
spaces. If you were to get out of the GA section to go to the restroom, for example, you lose your spot. You can't come back in. You can't just
mhm,
come back in 'cause there's a capacity to it, and by the time you exited, they let somebody else in,
yeah,
which is
true.
even more annoying. And then we didn't even get to see Migos that night, so that was, like, a bust.
That was a whole story in itself. I
Which
mean, we've talked
sucks
about it
because
before, but
now there's
still.
no Migos, so, like, that was, like, our one and only time to see it, and I will never
Yeah.
forgive myself for that.
No,
Anyways, I'm
there was
just
a reason
kidding.
why. Everything happens for a
True,
reason, you know?
true. True, true, true.
Um, but speaking of artists, I did wanna go back into your point about how you had certain artists that influence club culture.
Right.
I do agree that hip hop and even trap music itself had a lot of influence when it comes to club culture,
Yeah.
especially like you mentioned in like the early 90s and 2000s, you had hip hop icons that definitely shifted the way hip hop was perceived and the way club culture is perceived. You mentioned P. Diddy, who was, I agree, a very huge influence when it came to shifting the hip hop aesthetic.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, especially like in the 80s and like early 90s, hip hop was very much street based, right?
Street, yeah.
And then once
They took it
you see
indoors.
yeah, once P. Diddy and artists like that came into the scene, they shifted it to being like in hyper exclusive rooms, right? You
Yeah,
had
and
all
it's all
like
the
you said,
money that came with it too, so it's like
and
you
even
went
his brand about like the white parties, I think was
mhm,
like a big impact as well because he I guess in the white parties and this is just my from white chicks from what I
speaking
remember,
as a third party with
they're
completely
with
no
absolutely no interest
or
or
experience in the
experience.
matter.
Yeah.
Let me make it clear.
I've never attended one. I think there's definitely was like this invisible rule now that you as an artist or as an important person, you don't mingle with the peasants on the dance floor, right? You should be getting your own table because no one, like you said, should have access to you unless there's somebody because you're
Yeah.
somebody, right?
Yeah.
And then you have people like Jay-Z who has his mafioso mogul brand, right? I think he definitely took what P. Diddy brought to the table and he like
Made
increased
it
it or
to
added a little
yeah,
bit to it and added his own flair where now he's a mogul or an artist who's well known for like his financial positioning, right? Like that was
and
something
his
that he
business
is
acumen, yeah.
exactly. I think one of the ones that I I was trying to think how 50 Cent comes into this because Yeah, he has hits as far as, like, club, and, like, we always enjoy his music as far as, like, when we're going out, but
Mhm.
I think 50 Cent compared to, like, P. Diddy and Jay-Z is almost a little different because his
Uh-huh.
music videos are club culture, but I remember some of his music videos had more, like, men in the area, and they were, like, physically imposing just like him, right? Because he's, like, a big guy,
He
right?
is a big dude, yeah.
And they just have him, like, in the VIP just, like, staring people down,
And
versus, like,
intimidation,
oh
yeah.
yeah, exactly, versus, like, P. Diddy's, like, money, you got money, all girls around you,
With
where
his furs and shit.
yeah, and 50 Cent was very more, like, hyper masculine, like,
Mhm.
hustler
Yeah,
vibes, right? Like, that was his brand,
right.
um, but then we have, like, the 2016s, I think that's where Drake, Future even, I think Travis Scott was up and coming around that time, The
Yeah,
Weeknd.
the
You
weekend.
have a lot of people where the club culture Migos, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
completely shifted from that, like,
Tyga.
party scene. Tyga, yeah, exactly, and but the music changed too, right? Because the music before in the 2000s was like, "Oh, everybody party, everybody dance," but also, like, separate yourself from the peasants, where Drake is also encouraging that, but, like, the music went from this fun, dancey music to more, like, confessional, like, gloom, like, in your feelings vibes where it's
You know what it went from it being it went from it being like hustler, what is
"I'm a
it?
hustler,
It went from being
baby."
hustlers, soldiers out in the street, no, just getting street style to it being sad boys
Yeah,
entertainment. Sad boy
and rage,
entertainment
because Travis
and
Scott is
rage
also, like, a little
and rage.
rage.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, because I think Drake definitely plays into, like, the whole P. Diddy, Jay-Z brand of, like, "Yes, I'm gonna get my own table, I'm gonna be surrounded by girls,"
and,
but
like, asserting
also
himself as,
we're
like, the
gonna be
greatest and yeah,
we're gonna be in our own little circle, and we're just gonna, like,
be in our
be
feels.
like, yeah, we're gonna be in isolation, but we're still the elite, right? And we're
Yeah.
just gonna look around. I think especially I think Headlines is it Headlines? Yeah, like, that song always gets played in the club, but I feel like it's never, like, a dance club, it's just, like, people, like, like, rocking
Hype
to it.
People are hyping themselves to it.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
hyping themselves to it, and then I did wanna talk
I've
about Migos
seen
because I
I remember
oh,
seeing people sing that bar for bar on their
yeah.
Snapchat.
Same. I remember being in the club, people singing that bar for bar.
Yeah.
Lights are on, like the DJ lights are on, everybody's singing, and like no one's dancing, but everybody's singing. So it's like it's still a good combination of dancing, but it's just like more bopping,
More
like to
vibing
yeah, more vibing
and
vibes.
singing along, you'd say?
Yeah, like it's yeah, instead of dancing and sweating and having a good time per se. I
Mhm.
mean, you're having a good time either way, but it's a very
Yeah.
different environment, very different vibes. I was gonna say Migos, I think their impact was more so
Do you think they're the one not they're the ones, but, like, that's where you start seeing more of the strip club culture being showcased in these videos?
yeah,
Because
I
I feel
can
like when you think about, like, Migos and I mean, even Drake, right? But, like, when you
mhm,
have some of the, like, the trap artists
like
too,
trap. Mhm.
where that is really focused and, like, yeah, you're back in the streets, but you're indoors in
Well,
the strip
even the
club.
trap music was very much strip club anthems, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think they popularized, like, your crew being in a uniform almost, like, being dripped out, standing on the platforms, and, like, really only
Their
interacting with each other.
entourage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your own little entourage, like, their music, like,
Every rapper.
Versace, Bad and Bougie, like,
Yeah.
still stripper music, but also, like, patron emphasized, I guess, because men are the patrons to use, like, strip clubs, right? So they're like, "Yeah, we're here, we're bad and bougie, we got money, we're decked out, and this is our crew."
They were keeping them and their crew and their boys would keep the businesses alive.
Yeah. And then
'Cause
obviously we discussed Travis Scott. I think Future also is, like, one of those people that,
Party Next Door. Yeah.
influenced yeah, Party Next Door, yeah, a lot of that 2016 trap era,
Mhm.
and like you mentioned, many men want to replicate that exact image that their favorite rappers are
They
doing.
look up to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, they look up to them and they kinda want to they aspire to that to a certain
mhm,
degree too, right?
yeah,
Because
but I
that
think
was
they
what was it.
forget that you're in an actual party, you know what I mean? Like, that vibe that your artist is doing, it's like a 5-second video clip
It is
for
a
a music
video,
video,
yeah,
you know
and
what
it
I
is
mean? It's like
completely produced. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, like, they're not just looking out in the club the whole fucking time. It's just a music video, so I think sometimes they forget that and, like, the vibes that they give off, I'm like, "It's so boring," like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with men standing up on tables if they're dancing and having a great time and giving vibes, you know what I mean? But if they're
Here's
not,
the
then it's
thing,
like, "What are you
if
doing?"
you're gonna take up space in the club, you better bring the motherfucking vibes. Like I said, give us a little
Mhm,
show, take off your shirt, give us a little magic mic if you're gonna be up there. If you're just gonna be there and taking up space, then get
mhm.
the fuck out of the platform and let the people with the vibes get up there. That's my
Yeah,
take. Whoever too, because, like, we were talking about it earlier, right? Like, it's like, if you're gonna take up space in those, like, bring the vibe. Sometimes
mhm,
people are worried about, like, "Oh, it's just not it anymore." Bitch, are you part of the problem? Or, like, is it because you're also not bringing the vibes and you're just like, sometimes people are so concerned with what other people are doing. It's like, "Bitch, what are
mhm,
you doing in this club? You
yeah.
enjoy yourself," right? Like, I
'Cause
feel
in the
like
club, we all
we
fam,
all
okay?
fam,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think and again, there's just, like, hyper awareness of how people are being perceived or how who's looking at you, who's not, who has this, who has not, and it's kinda like this constant comparison, and I think that's a
Mhm,
direct, um like, whether it's an influence or reflection of, like, we on social media, everybody sort of has this, like, everybody showcases certain versions of themselves, and when you're on these social media platforms, psychologically, it's inevitable for you to not compare yourself to others, right? So, like, that's kinda already indoctrinated on us, and even though we're not in, like, physically in social media, now we're in these physical spaces, and people are still programmed in that way and looking to see who's doing what, what's doing that, what is this person recording, oh, is this cool that they're doing, and what am I
yeah,
doing, and, like, my outfit, my this, and I was just like, "Oh god, that's so overwhelming." I just wanna dance. We're just here to
yeah,
dance, we're just here to feel the vibes and have fun. So I do think there's a little bit an element of that too, where people are so fixated on that, and it kind of ruins the vibe for you subconsciously too,
yeah.
or others.
I think one of
Sucks.
the conversations that we came across, especially when discussing, like, men and club culture and, like,
Mhm.
them dancing on furniture, I've seen obviously a lot of critiques that,
Yeah.
"Oh, men just wanna be us. They wanna be us so bad." You know what I mean? And like I
Yeah.
said, I honestly don't care. And like you mentioned, you're like, "I don't care as long as you're also bringing the vibes," I think, but I don't know if that's an if overall that's, like, an accurate, assessment of what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, in that comment, yeah, I do think it is very interesting that we have this shift, right?
Mhm,
Of where it seems like men are dominating these spaces and you are curious as to why, right?
mhm,
Are they alone because they want to be, in the sense of, like, just them running around? Because, for example, like, I know, like, when us girls go to the club and we just want it to be the girls, we're not out here trolling for men or looking for men, and even if we get pursued, we're very quick to dismiss it or not even engage because we are not looking, it's not that kind of night. Like, we're trying to enjoy ourselves, and if we get a table, it's also to sort of shield us for some of that, right? So,
yeah,
like, I understand when girls are alone in a table space or in their area, like, I get why that's happening. I'm
mhm.
curious as to the men that are in these spaces and it's just men, like, what are they like, are they, like, choosing for it to just be men? Like, are they
Well,
excluding women on purpose? Or are, like, women just not flocking to it because it's a turnoff almost to see that many men together? Like, I'm curious on that front.
Well, like we discussed, I do think it's more so a financial power situation when you have so many men because again, it is an expensive the clubs are expensive, the drinks are expensive, getting a table is expensive. So if you can
Right.
buy a table, you can buy a bottle, depending on the bottles, because they also like those bottles have
There's
different
levels
prices,
to this,
right?
baby.
There's
Yeah.
level to that. So it's like what bottle are you getting? What tables are you getting? How close to the DJ are you? You know what I mean? Like all of that matters, I think, to them. And like when people care about that stuff, I think it is more so of like, I can afford this. And
Mhm.
so because we're also in a culture where people are like women are gold diggers and women want providers and
Mhm.
this is what I can offer and it's more so them not depending again on their personality or their charm, it's like my money or my table
Will
speaks
bring
for itself, you know
and
what I
it'll
mean?
attract women or the right
Yeah,
woman or
if they
whatever,
care for that stuff.
if they
But like you
care.
said, there's some women that are like, "I don't wanna be surrounded by men in a table." Like, that's
Mhm.
weird, right? I don't feel safe. So, it's
Right.
a very much a double-edged sword, but again, most men don't date for the female gaze, they date for the male gaze, right? They care more
Right.
so about their what their friends think, right? So, if they get a hot chick at the club, "Hey, I got a hot girl at the club. I'm paying for this table," or "I'm paying for this bottle." You know, some men say, I'm like, "I'm paying for this."
Mhm.
I do think, yeah, it's a very, what is it? Like, yeah, it's a socioeconomic situation here where everybody cares about money if they care about money. But I think it's also a safety thing because, like I said, most men are very self-conscious because they can't dance per se, or they don't have rhythm, or they don't wanna make themselves look bad. So being at a table kind
That's
of
true.
bars you from having to show any sort of rhythm or, again,
Right.
any personality or anything, or even it just makes you look cooler, right? If you're just bobbing to the music, again, bobbing to, like, Drake or Future, and especially that type of music where it goes from, "Hey, this music requires you to dance." These rappers, these artists are now showing you that they're not really doing much in music videos, they're just out there looking cool with their friends, taking over the world, and again, that's what they're trying to emulate, and that's what they just wanna look cool, so I'm like, "Eh." I also wonder, I'm like, if the music changed, right? If rappers now,
Mhm.
I guess this kind of makes it because, like, you have people like Chris Brown, you have people like Usher who do make dancing music, who do dance, but
Yeah.
when it comes to the club culture, as far as I've seen, they're not out there dancing. They're also perpetuating this whole, like, strip club behavior as far as, like, I'm gonna have my table with my
With
guy friends, maybe some hot girls if there's any hot
yeah.
girls, right? But they're not out there busting any moves. So I'm like,
Right.
if you had artists who do dance and are perpetuating dancing, even if they have their own table, would the male mentality shift in that aspect? You know what I mean? Like, would club culture shift in that aspect? Because now we have women that
Yeah.
want to dance, men that want to dance, and now you would have to open up the dance floor and remove some of these tables so there is room to dance.
Well, I do think that the music and obviously the artist obviously have an influence on this. I do think that it's a little bit bigger than that, and we have to think about what's happening outside, like, in the more, like, larger socioeconomical context
Mhm,
that would influence these how the dynamics within the club play, right? Because I feel like the club being a, I don't wanna say public place, but like a let's call it private space because we've been saying how it's been commercialized and stuff, but you still are in a position where you are technically in public because you're not there with, like, just people you know, you're meeting new people, right?
mhm,
It is sort of like a microcosm of the way the world is functioning, right? So I'm curious if, like, if it would be a function of the way power dynamics and relationship dynamics are between men and women in the
true.
outside world,
Mhm,
right? That would influence that shift, right? Because
mhm,
some of the critiques that I've heard from, for example, women that are saying like, "Oh, like y'all just want to be bitches," or like y'all just want to be us so much, like y'all are so jealous of us. And this kind of stemming from the part where you hear like the men that have been like, "Oh, women have it so easy. Like you guys get in the
mhm,
club for free," for example, or like, like you have everything is sort of like it's more accessible or easier to you because you're a girl and like that stuff kind of just comes to you, right? Because
mhm.
again, because men are willing to pay, right? So it's like
Like,
ours
who built that program, babes?
right, right. So is it now that men are sort of like withdrawing that sort of like privilege, dare I say, of like giving like paying for women to be at these tables with them, paying for women's drinks? Because nowadays I feel like certain men, not all men, right, are a little bit more reluctant to pay for a girl's drink, whether you're gonna put out or not, kind of thing.
Mhm,
And is that a function of like, is it just that like you don't have that kind of expendable income anymore and then it's a function of the economy? Or is it also psychologically a reaction to women gaining so much financial independence and stuff where like they're making their own moves now, right? So like
mhm.
it is very interesting to think about of why there's been such a shift and like why are men more like the way that they're moving indoors because women have also changed the way they operate within the clubs. Like
Yeah.
I was talking about how like we are now in a position where we can buy our own motherfucking table. I've done that before when we've been out and about and
Same,
stuff, or when
yeah.
we celebrated and stuff. So it's like and we've never necessarily relied on men to have a good time at the club, right? But I do
Mhm,
think there was a time where there was not necessarily a reliance, but there was a social notion that as a girl, you would get to go out and go to these things and you would get your drinks paid for you and your friends. You would get a table if you knew how to work your way around, a
mhm.
certain kind of men. And then men would like lean into it and women would lean into it too because it meant that you secured a table for you and your girls. You secured drinks for the night and everybody was having a ball.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot of intersectionality of all that because obviously there's a lot of resentment between the genders right now.
yeah,
Obviously, the economy isn't great, so there is gonna be reluctance for men to, like, spend money that they obviously don't have and are pretending to have.
right.
Because 'cause let's be honest, like, that's probably what it is.
There's a lot of
And
flossing happening in these spaces too.
yeah, and then, of course, again, I think just the messaging that's being put out as far as, like, the younger generation goes is I think we had talked about this, how music has shifted so much where it's influenced where we are relationship wise with men and women, right?
Mhm.
Before maybe in the 90s and the 2000s, a lot of the music was very much about like heartbreak and true love and all that stuff, right? Where, or even in the 80s, and that you saw that reflected in society as far as like relationships go. And now you have like 2000s, late 2000s, 2010s, where it was very much like, bands will make her clap or whatever. It's very much about, what would you say, hypersexuality and even sexual liberation because a lot of the pop girlies and girlies in music also kind of played on that as well. You have
Yeah, a
people like
lot of girls
Rihanna,
got
right?
their bags from
Mhm.
this.
Yeah,
Artists and also like the girls that were playing into the rappers that were paying for their flights, paying for their bags, paying for their BBLs, whatever.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, here's the thing, the men were paying. They were willing to pay.
Yeah, but and again, is it a resentment of the access that they thought that they would have or were promised to have because they
Yeah.
see their favorite rapper having access, but it's like, you
Yeah, exactly.
forget that it's a completely different, you guys are in completely
You're
different
not the same, first of all.
branches, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, "Oh, maybe if I," I don't know if it's, and again, you have the whole red pilling situation where,
I was
like,
gonna
if
say,
you
I'm like, "What? This reminds me of." No, I'm just kidding.
but yeah, I wanted to go based off of, like, what you had said about how the girlies or some girlies are out there like, "Oh, they're so jealous of us and wanna be like us," vibe because they're on the tables, and that's something that's been associated with women doing a lot and has been, perpetuated, and
I
I
was
think
like
mostly
I was
women
like,
have
"Are
been
the men taking the
sexualized to do
tables
that.
back?" Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of plays a little bit into how men are dressing also recently. I think that there has been discussion about, like, rhinestones and men's
The men are
fashion and stuff.
bedazzling their
Yeah,
outfits.
they're bedazzled, they're sparkly, and
I
how
missed the memo because I was like, the girls are bedazzling their stuff and the men are bedazzling their clothing. So that's an interesting I'm just kidding. Some girls bedazzle their stuff too. But
yeah,
I'm just thinking about all the girls bedazzling like their pill cases and like
their
their
cars.
skincare, their lip glosses, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah, I think most of the reactions that I've seen, especially from women, are very much like,
Yeah, and I have issue with that
"Same."
to some degree because like, I
Mhm,
I do think there is something to be said or just, like, talked about because it is an interesting phenomenon, right? That the tide is shifting or whatever, but I've always been a person who's been like, yeah, like, men have been
wait,
just like
hold on,
like
sorry. Can you go back on why it is like, to you at least, why it's an interesting phenomenon as far as, like, men's fashion and rhinestoning?
Well, men's fashion in general has always been very interesting because I feel like we've always talked about like I mean, we've talked about gender roles and the ideas of like what it is to be masculine versus feminine and a lot of the way that these like ideas or structures are sort of like differentiated is by men is described by like not acting like women or not doing things that are women. So when men
Mhm,
crosses that boundary of doing something that maybe is has been historically associated
feminine,
with
yeah.
it feminizes them right away, right? And
Mhm.
it's put them in these boxes, right? And we've talked about how women have been put in boxes too, right? But,
Yeah.
like, when it comes to clothing, for example, I mean, there was a time where, like, it was all fun and games, like, in the '80s and stuff that men were a little bit more creative with their fashion and whatever, but then we got really restrictive again, and there's always just been this, like, there's been this self-imposed of what like, how it is to dress masculine in men or whatever, and if anyone ever diverts or, like, departs from that,
Mhm.
it starts like, oh, like, he might be a little
A sassy man.
zesty,
Yeah.
or he might be a little it feminizes them immediately, and I think it sucks because I feel we've always talked about how, like, the way you dress is part of, like, expression, and it
Mhm.
shouldn't necessarily mean that because you're a little bit dressed a little bit more flamboyant or just outside of the spectrum, if you will,
Mhm.
that it immediately says, like, points out, like, "Oh, he must be, like, gay, or he must be, like, bi, or
Yeah.
whatever." So I that's why I was like, I don't want to be so judgmental so as for people to not want to express themselves in the way that they dress, especially men, because then they're gonna be, like, signaled as, like, "Oh, you're just trying to be a bitch," or, like, because then we're doing that essentially, we're, like, trying to feminize them by
And you're
that
also boxing yourself as a
exactly,
woman, and you're
exactly.
also falling into that whole,
That
like, stereotype.
dichotomy.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
like, we're perpetuating the very thing that we're trying to dismantle
Yeah, we're
by
losing the plot
having
here.
those kind exactly. I'm like, we're these are all just distractions at the end of the day, and it's like, we're that this isn't what we need to be pissed off about, you guys. This is not what we need to be focusing about.
Yeah.
So, that's why I do take issue with that, right? But like I said, like, it is an interesting phenomenon to see, and you wonder what is sort of, propelling this or what circumstances have made it either okay for them like among men
Mhm.
because you starting to see where men are like it is cool to dress like that let me do my thing too, right? Like
Mhm.
I recently watched the versus between B2K and Pretty Ricky,
Pretty
and,
Ricky, yeah.
like and obviously they're I mean, these are, like, boy band legends, etcetera, and, like, the whole, like, coordinated outfits and whatever, so they never shied away from glitz and glam with their outfits and stuff, but, like, it
Mhm.
was cool to see, like, you see B2K with, like, the all black outfits, and it was kinda looking a little harder, if you will, but they were all, like, bedazzled too, and
Mhm.
then you look at, like, Pretty Ricky, and they were, like, in satin and red and furs and stuff like that, but it's just, like, that's very emblematic of the times too, but anyway, I was just like, "Oh, it's cool." Like, it is cool, like, their outfits look cool at the end of the day, like, even with the rhinestones and stuff, so
Yeah,
I
I
was just
have
like
seen people, like, bring up, like, Michael Jackson or Prince, for instance, like, going back to your '80s reference and how, like, they
yes.
bedazzled or had a lot of bedazzled
They
Freddie
had so much
Mercury, for
fun.
instance.
Yeah.
Um, so but people are like, "Oh, it's because 'cause they're artists." Like, it's part of the performance, right? But then it's like
Yeah,
you
but
forget that
why?
stuff like that is how fashion gets filtered down to, like, the peasants, for instance. Like,
Yeah,
again,
it's an
like, it
influencer.
starts at the top and it kind of filters down, so I'm like, when you see now men's fashion getting into the rhinestoning of stuff, I'm like, this was a lot of years in the making, right?
Yeah,
When
it's
it
a long
kind
time coming, or we were just circling back to it because, it's not the first time we've chosen to do this.
yeah, it's not the first time, like, even what was it? What's the 2000s?
Ed Hardy?
Ed Hardy was
Yeah.
rhinestones, you know what I mean? And everybody
Yeah,
wore the shit out of that. So it's like, what's the shift now that all of a sudden men wearing rhinestones? Is it because of the excessiveness of it? Do you think that that's why people have a problem with it?
perhaps maybe there could be a thing where, like, people aren't ready for it, or I don't know, but like I said, it just feels like a distraction, like, we shouldn't be upset at that because how is that offensive? Like, for example, it's not offensive to me that men do that, like, yeah, maybe I won't necessarily, gravitate towards a man that wears rhinestone clothing, but who knows? Maybe, like I said, like the B2K people, they look good with their outfits, you know? And I don't wanna say like, "Oh, I wouldn't be attracted to someone that wears something that's bedazzled," because then again, I'm falling into the trap of like, their men need to dress a certain way, and like, if they're
Mhm.
bedazzled, like, that signals something else, you know? But I don't know, I just think that
I mean, I think with everything, there is definitely like a line where it looks good and then it's tacky, and this is for both genders. I'm like,
yeah.
there's some dresses that girls wear that are rhinestoned, or I'm like, I personally wouldn't wear that because I feel I couldn't pull it off. Some people
Mhm.
pull it off, some people don't, right? So
Right.
when it comes to, like, men's fashion and the rhinestoning, I agree also, I'm like, it looks
There's
good, like,
always balance. We have to
yeah,
balance it out.
there's always balance, there's always something getting overdone, like, people rhinestoning your
Yeah.
cars, I'm like, I get the aesthetic, but also you're overdoing it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but I do agree, I do think that people who take an issue with men wearing rhinestones in general are very much, like, bordering the line of being, like, homophobic,
Yeah.
and, like, perpetuating that, and I think it is an issue because it's like we as women are like you said, we're trying to get out of these boxes that we're being put into by men, like what it is to be a woman, you know, I can definitely say
And
that.
the hypersexualization of women and how we're
Yeah.
supposed to dress or what it means to dress sexy or
Or the
beautiful, right?
hyperfeminization, right? Because I could definitely
Yeah.
say if someone saw me on my everyday at home, they would be like, "You are not feminine because you're not wearing feminine leaning outfits," right?
Yeah.
And
Or
the same thing can be said about men, so it's like, we as a society just need to get to a point where it's like,
we don't
obviously
gender
there's a
everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
and rhinestones can't be gendered. I'm like, "That's crazy if you're gendering rhinestones." Like, we've literally lost the plot, people.
I can understand where it could be a little bit of a shock factor because 'cause we're not used to it, right? And it is like, not like used to it, but it's like like you said, it might be a little excessive, right? But it could also
Mhm.
be a function of like, for example, like I can I'll try to put myself in a place where I'm like, okay, is it like women fighting back, not necessarily fighting back, but like their criticisms over men doing that. They're doing the same thing that men are doing when they criticize women for not being traditional enough, for not wanting to be stay at home people, for not wanting to have kids and stuff like that. Like, is it something similar where like they're coming for them? Like, you know how like men are coming for women in terms of trying to put them back in like a home space or like, oh, like your gender, what it means to be feminine. You got to be home. You got to have kids. You got to do that,
Mhm.
you gotta stop working, you gotta stop voting, you gotta give up your rights and stuff like that. And, like, that's where some of the criticisms come towards women. Like, is it also women doing that because they're criticizing men like, "Oh, you," like, when people say, like, "Oh, men used to go to war, men used to fix stuff, men u," like, this, and that. So
Yeah.
is it part of that too, where they're coming like, that's where some of the like, the criticism is stemming from?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's resentment there and
Right, yeah.
frustration for sure, but I'm like, I guess it comes down to it's like, are you fighting eye for an eye, or are
That's what
you
I'm s
like
yeah, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
and
And
it's
that's why
like
it's like, we need to check
how much of a
ourselves.
circle do we wanna go into chasing our
Yeah,
tails,
because 'cause
right?
they're
Like,
just perpetuating these, like yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm like, women nowadays wear tailored suits, you know what I mean? Like, suits
And they look
historic
goddamn great wearing them.
fierce, but historically, they are masculine, right? But it comes to a point, it's like if men can't wear rhinestones, then what are we going to turn around and be like, "Well, we can't wear this then." If we're saying men
Yeah.
can't wear rhinestones, then we can't wear tailored suits, you know what I mean? If we wanna be like
Well, it's the policing that's an issue, right? Like, policing what men and women can or shouldn't be wearing, it's a very slippery slope because it's like with anything else. Okay, we're policing clothes now, what are we policing next?
mhm.
Bodily autonomy, our rights to vote, or what they're access to things. We do need to check ourselves and be mindful of what exactly it is we're looking to police in each other and why, and where's that stemming from, because it is a little dangerous to start doing that. And it's harmful too.
Well, I think also we have to keep in mind that racially it's super harmful, right? Because historically, you know, men wore extreme sparkle, especially like in the 18th century. You know, they, like you said, you know, men would wear silk, sequins, diamonds, pearls, even, and
They
that
would wear wigs for Christ's
wigs.
sake.
And that meant that you were wealthy and that signaled power, right? But obviously, after like what the Industrial Revolution, things kind of went downhill from there
But
because,
But you
you
also
know,
think no, I think that's a really good point, but you're also it's like we ascribed value to these things, right? Like
mhm.
this is all again socially constructed at the end of the day. It's like you were saying earlier, bedazzling should not be gendered. It's not something to
It's
be
not that
gendered,
deep, yeah.
but we have ascribed it meaning, and in the context of like, oh, rhinestones and flashy things like that, it's more girly. It's a girly thing to
No,
do.
but what I was saying is like back then in the 18th century, because all of these things that we now ascribe as girly were masculine. So it's
Mhm.
like fashion is always recycling. Things are always being gendered in different eras. But
Yeah,
also when
that's
you think
so
about it racially, especially like in areas of the 18th century, you would say that people who had access to that type of wealth and that type of privilege to be able to wear things that we now gender as female were predominantly white men. So
Mhm,
now you have, especially in a culture, club culture, that is heavily influenced by hip hop and trap music, that is also heavily equated to African Americans, right?
mhm,
You also have to think about how does that affect black men and the masculinization of black men and
mhm.
what that means to them. Because I think if anything, especially when it comes to men, you have to think of the men that will be mostly affected by this type of critique, right? Or this
Or
type of
policing, yeah.
policing, right?
And I
Because
will say
you will see most people like, oh, this is white people shit, right? Or like this is white men shit. And I've seen that a lot in social media where they're like many people will allow a white person to get away with a lot of the things like Harry Styles wearing a dress. They're like, "Oh, that's a white man shit. He can do that." But if Jaden
Jaden.
Smith did it, people had a huge problem with that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Two very similar men and two very similar areas in the fashion industry, very different reactions. Maybe people didn't like what Harry Styles was doing, but it was whatever, you know, it is what it is. But like when Jaden Smith did it, it's like, oh, it was a bigger problem. So it's like we also have to be careful of the stuff we're perpetuating because it'll affect other people more than or other races more than the than others. So
Yeah, no, I agree. And, to go back to what you were saying, how like back then some of these things were feminine or things that we ascribe feminine now used to be
heels, yeah.
appealed to masculine or vice versa. Again, it's like that because we are the one
Mhm.
that like made that, right? Like socially, we're like, hey, it's masculine to dress and look like this, wear wigs and the taconcitos and the little tight fitted pants and stuff, and the really
Yeah,
cool bedazzled jackets, right? And then at some point we like switched it up and was like, "Oh no, that's more feminine now." So again, it just goes back to like we have the power to like give meaning to things or take meaning away from it. So
or
again,
not care about it, yeah.
exactly. So
Mhm,
it's like yeah. Yeah, when you talk about like the way that different races are impacted or like ethnic groups are impacted
mhm,
by the critiques of this. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point because you have seen like historically speaking how a lot of the like one of the easiest ways that racism has functioned towards black bodies, specifically black male bodies, is how do you
mhm.
feminize them to kind of dehumanize them, right?
Yep.
And so it is, yeah, it is just important to talk about that and to take that into consideration because
Yeah,
not everybody
especially us as women, right? Because we are technically when you're comparing the hierarchy, right, of like gender and race, it's like historically it's been white, black, and then you have gender where it's like men and
and that's
women.
where it intersects, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like we can't be, like you said, perpetuating all of this hate and judgment on people that could truly be impacted by it, and also putting ourselves in a box and perpetuating the shit that we're trying to fight against. And it's like,
Also,
where do we get off?
yeah, no, also, can we just be real and acknowledge that Black culture has always been at the forefront of fashion, whether it's
Hmm.
men or women, what they're putting forward. And it only became cool when white people started like literally copying what they were doing. And like to your point with the whole Harry Styles shit, it's like, oh, it's only appropriate or socially accepted when it's like a white person doing it, or it's only
Or
seen as
socially like
cool.
ignored, right? It's like we
Yeah.
don't
Or
like
the
it, but we're also not going to make a big deal out of it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's just like,
Well, aside from that, like as far as club culture goes and, all of the ins and outs of it and fashion, how do you think we can save club
Club
culture or
culture.
revive it, I guess you can say?
I it's a great question. Well, first of all, the women need to get back in heels. No, just kidding. That's another way to perpetuate
Well, yeah, even
gender
women's fashion
norms,
has changed so
fashion.
much, right?
Yes, we
Yeah.
went from dressing business casual and the men too to dressing in
And milk-made
sneakers.
dresses and sneakers.
Yeah, it's definitely what a time to be alive or for us to have seen.
The shift, yeah.
I will say the shift. I don't wanna say the descent and the, like, the killing of the club culture because, listen, so long as we're alive, so long as we're making music, so long as we find joy in, like, gathering in third spaces or trying to find love in a hopeless place, where there's a will, there's a way. So I
Mhm.
definitely think that we have the capacity to do it. I just think that has to be a collective effort, you know? But in the
Yeah.
meantime, cada quien puede hacer su luchita. And like I said earlier, it's just like go and enjoy yourself. Go and be the vibe. Don't worry about anybody else. You
Mhm.
just go and do it and be the vibe. And people will follow if they're on the same wavelength or if they're also in the vibe. And if they don't, that's fine. That's their pedo. You can still have a great time and not mind your business. That's all, you know?
You know what I thought of when you said that, or what's been on my mind? You know how
But
when we went to the Grasshopper with Joey, and
yes,
then that one remix song with Ice Cubes, "If you can do it, put your back
back
into
into
it."
it.
Or you
Yes,
know
you can
how
do
in
it. Put your
TikTok,
back.
it's like the little freeze, like, and
Yes.
I remembered, I'm like, we were all acting a fool, being like, and then we like got into the song, and I remember a person came up to us, and they're like, "Oh my god, you guys are so funny. You guys are such a vibe." And I was like, "What did we do that was
I
such a
know.
vibe?" And then I was
We
thinking
were
about it,
having
I'm like,
a
we
chill
because we were
drinking
sitting, drinking and drinking water and just, like, vibing, but we were being stupid,
with
and then
each
I thought
other.
back, and I was like, "That's why he said we were a vibe, because we were literally being hella dumb," but it's like,
Yeah.
the place is packed, and I'm like,
Everybody's
"That's
like
we're just doing us, and we didn't even realize that, yeah, people can see what we're doing and being
exactly.
stupid."
And
But it's
that's
like
how we always operate when we go out, and that's why it's so
mhm,
much fun, and, like, we don't know what's gonna happen. We don't go out with an agenda. We're just, like, running on vibes and literally dehydration.
no.
Okay. No, but, like, yeah, it was true because when we ended up at at the Grasshopper, it was, like, the end of the night, and we're like, "Okay, let's just see what it is," you know? It was already, like, our last call, if you will, of the
Yeah.
night, and we were just, like, doing what we do best, which is just, like, enjoy the music and then be a vibe, but within ourselves, like, we're not, like,
Mhm.
doing it to, like, "Oh, what kind of attention do we get?" or "Who's looking at us?" or "Who's not looking at us?" Could
And
care
I think
less.
it's and obviously that's why it's so important to make sure that when you guys are going out and, having fun, that you surround yourself with people who are going to match your energy. And even
Yeah.
if that means meeting new people and matching other
Yeah,
people's
people will
energy,
gravitate
yeah.
towards you too, like, we've met some
Mhm.
pretty cool people in that way too.
Like, get out of your head and just focus on each other, have fun with each other. And when you guys have fun with each other, everybody else is gonna be like, "Oh my god, they're having so much fun. I wanna be like them." You know what? You're
Yeah.
right. The night is young. Let's have a fucking great time.
Yeah, and I think another thing too is because and I know that I've fallen prey to this sometimes where it is a different generation, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to
Mhm.
know that it's like it is a different generation, it's a different vibe. We are experiencing a different life in 2026 than we were experiencing in 2016 and
16.
obviously in
Mhm.
2006, and we have to embrace it in to the best of our ability, right? Like
Mhm.
I know sometimes I get caught up with like, oh, like the music's not that great, which sometimes it isn't because
Mhm.
and that's the DJ's fault because they don't know how to mix right and they don't know how to like take on the audience's like
Like, read
vibe.
the room.
They
Yeah.
don't know how to read the room sometimes, but you know, like we'll give it to you. Like you just need
You
to
know what?
practice more. But there's been times where I've been like, oh my God, like the music's not that great because they didn't play this type of music or like they
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of like old bangers or stuff like that. Cause I'm not too privy to what's new and hot right now, right? But it's also like this is what's on right now. Like find a vibe, you know, like you don't have to know the music
I was
to
gonna
enjoy
say
it, you know?
that's why I was listening to the more recent music, because 'cause I'm like, "You know what? It is true, there is a kind of a disconnect between the club and, like, the music that's out now." It's very girly pop, but I wouldn't say it's, like, very danceable. It's more so, like, again, it's very, like, "Oh, it's the vibe." Like, we can all vibe to it, but it's not like we can all break out and dance. So,
Mhm,
that's why I was like, there is gonna have to be a shift in music. I
mhm.
think right now a lot of artists are very much in that idea of like, my art needs to say something, you know what I mean? It needs to, like, be a Lemonade album, it
Which I
needs to be
get because 'cause we've been
yeah,
criticizing about how people don't bring out bodies of work anymore,
yeah,
so I get that,
yeah,
but sometimes they're, like, missing out on good music or putting out
yeah.
stuff because
I'm
they're
like,
so
sometimes you
fixated
just
on
need to be
one
a
plot.
J.Lo in a Beyoncé world, you know what I mean? I know J.Lo tried her hand at putting out a body of work, but I'm like, "Girl, you are known for your dance music, do what you do best and
Yeah,
dance."
and people will buy into it
Yep.
and sell it, you know?
And I think the DJ thing is a good point too, because even when we were talking about like events and like DJ sponsored events with like popular DJs, I
Mhm.
do think that one of the things that I do appreciate, even though obviously when you're DJing a place, you're gonna have to get the practice in. So it's just like, you're growing with the paint or it's
It's
growing
growing
pains.
pains,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. But I'm like, I do think that it's great when you have like underground DJs that are up and coming and playing music like that because when we went out with your cousin, like every single place we hit, all like
Bangers.
bangers. The DJs were DJing,
What is it? The
doing
vibes
their
were
thing.
immaculate. We were there to
Yeah.
dance, and a dance was had. I was sore for days the next day,
I'm
and
like,
that's how I know it was a good night, and
yeah,
that's how
I
I know
worked
that
out
we
my
get
muscles. I got
yes,
my steps
and that's
in.
all I asked for when I go out dancing, like, that's all I and it wasn't like we were twerking our asses off or we were, like,
No, we were
breaking our
demure, but
backs.
still fun.
We were just having a good time, and the
A
music
little
was good.
salsa, a little cumbia, a little hip hop, a little
A
reggaeton. It was
variety, yeah.
everything. So if
Mhm,
you're a DJ out there, and you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep
mhm.
practicing, getting those remixes done, and be a part of the change for club
Exactly.
culture.
Right? Because I will say I have seen a lot, especially a lot of, like, local bars and stuff, like you said, we are not necessarily clubbing anymore, but we definitely do love a good bar scene now, and at least on social media, I see a lot of DJs saying like, "Oh, come to my party. I'm, like,
Mhm,
having a this type of night, a perreo night or a
mhm,
salsa, a cumbia, whatever," and they usually are pretty, like they're pretty good hit, like, people are
mhm,
there, people are enjoying themselves, and it's nice to see. So, like I said, I definitely think that we can do it, where there's a will, there's a way, but I think we also just need to recognize that, like, times have changed, and so we have to kinda embrace it and bring the vibes and create a new vibe in this
uh-huh,
generation, I do think there's also something to be said about how, like, yeah, the economy is also not giving, people don't wanna go out as much, because everything's expensive, so it's like, "Why am I gonna go out and be sweaty?" And like, that people just think so much of the inconvenience, and I think that's a
mhm.
lot of, like, the newer generation where it's like, it's such a dread to go out and be social, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
so people would just rather stay in, right? Like, "Why am I gonna oh, I have to get ready. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, like, there's a line. Oh" it's the price for being alive and living and experiencing things, guys, come on. We just have to set better expectations, I guess. But, just, not that you have to go out and dance, because if that's not your vibe, that's not your vibe, dance by yourself or dance at home so long as you're dancing. What is that one song says? "I hope you dance." That is what I'll say. But no, I think it would be cool to, like, reinvigorate these club spaces and third
Are
spaces.
are we gonna have to go to the club friend and just, like,
I
for
think we do. We need
for
to do some
research
ethnographic
purposes?
research. Yes,
Mhm.
let's put our hats back on and get back out there.
I guess we're going to Vegas. Brianna? Just kidding.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Like, I have been very curious as to what the club scene is out there nowadays
Me
because
too. We
we have
haven't
not
been. Yeah,
been in a club. I wanna say the last club we went to was Club Zouk, I wanna say.
yeah. Well, it's like what, 2022,
That's when
ish.
it was when we went to see Katy Perry.
Yeah,
It was, like,
twenty
around the time, right?
three, 23 or 22,
Yeah, because
somewhere
even,
around
like,
there.
the other like, when we went to, what was it? We went to Lovers and Friends. When we went out, it was more like a bar scene.
Mhm.
The Mexican spot, and
Yeah,
then when we went I forgot where else we went, but yeah, they was giving more bars. It wasn't like we actually pulled up to a club.
yeah. We haven't been to a club in a while, so maybe we should go just for research purposes and see what that's about.
Maybe. Yeah. We have been wanting to go see Brie. Now we have the perfect excuse
Catch us
to go to the
outside.
club while we're out there. I have been wanting to check out Vanderpump Hotel, which is now where the Cromwell used to be, and they still have Dre's.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
I'm curious if they did anything to Dre's or if it's called something else now, who knows? Um,
yeah, that'll be interesting, but
yeah.
well, that's all we have for you guys.
Well, thanks for coming on this journey with us trying to figure out what the fuck happened to club culture and
And
how we're
men.
gonna fix it. Oh, yeah, and men, and hopefully you guys hopefully you guys feel empowered to just go out and dance where you can, where, like, there's good DJs and just check out especially a lot of local spots. I feel like
Mhm.
in an era where everything's commercialized and everything's so fucking expensive, and try to give back to your local bars, local small businesses, and check out any, like, new and up and coming DJs that might be playing nearby.
Yep.
That way you don't have to worry about going all the way to LA or all the way to I don't know where to have a good time.
Mhm. All right, everyone. Hope you guys have a great day, a great week, a great weekend, and we'll
Hope
see
you
you on the
can.
next episode.
Yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.